What Barry Trammell, we mentioned his article yesterday. He's got the what's called the scissors or whatever. A column is kind of may hit on 8 to 10 or 12 different topics in the Oklahoma. And we've had Barry on the show, longtime writer, covers the state of Oklahoma. And he had mentioned that his source in the Big 12 had mentioned that Colorado was on the edge of joining the Big 12. We have touched on that a lot. We have never been able to truly confirm that, but I know we have a lot of people on the site that work for our premium section and or the company that have had many different details on that. The Colorado Board of Regents is meeting, and their meeting has been extended for like an extra hour. That doesn't mean that it's about the realignment. That doesn't mean it's to discuss the Big 12. But there are donors who have been in contact. That will be going on. What that ends up being, I don't know, but it will be silly if I didn't at least bring that up. So there you are with that. And, of course, we mentioned Barry Trammell and his article yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, Barry Trammell is not somebody who just throws something at the wall for the sake of doing so. I don't think he's, like, pursuing the hits at this point, at this stage.
He might not even know what that means.
Yeah,
like me.
So, and, you know, he really doesn't have a hand in the expansion game as far as the Big 12 is concerned anymore. You know, I guess with Oklahoma State to an extent he does, but I think of him as more of an Oklahoma guy. But I guess he does
with
with
Oklahoma State
with
fans.
Oklahoma. Yeah, well, with Oklahoma State he kind of does, but he doesn't have like a real need to get into the waters here. Yep. So the fact that he said what he said and wrote what he wrote was of major interest because that was a voice you weren't expecting to hear, and it wasn't just some random, you know, like who the heck is this person? It's like he's got some skins on the wall, so that was of interest. I think if you know, I haven't said it a bunch, but I said, like, if you want to go heavy into realignment talk, our site has been, you know, graced with hundreds of pages long threads discussing realignment. And, you know, I'll just throw one interesting note because it's behind the paywall, and that's where a lot of that conversation's taking place. But, you know, the fact that maybe the Big 12 was a little too openly flirtatious with Colorado, I thought was very interesting just from the standpoint that, you know, they showed a little bit too much interest probably. And you know, that gave Colorado the opportunity to kind of take their time if they so choose. And that could very well be what they're doing. I'm a little leery of any Board of Regents meetings because I feel like we've done that like 10 times during this last year and none of it's really turned into what you thought it could turn into. But that doesn't mean that this couldn't be a situation where it does. You know, I'm still not sold on the Buffs, you know, being all in on moving or anything like that, but it is, you know, something to take note of. And, you know, the longer this goes on and the quieter some people stay and the more you're just like, all right, well, it's another day. I mean, we're end of May now. We got 1 week left in May. It does make you go, okay, well, you know, the longer this thing goes, the more of an opportunity there is for something to actually occur. So we'll see what that actually, you know, ends up meaning for Colorado.
Yeah, we've all known Barry Trammell for a while. I've actually loved getting to talk to him when I do because I love because we used to have T.R. Sullivan, who's a baseball writer on the show. I love getting to talk to any old school grizzled writer like that's been through it all because they can also help you gain perspective on the, you know, kind of fantastical world of journalism right now where, you know, people throw so many things out. I can tell you Barry doesn't do anything for clicks and page views like you guys said earlier. I can just imagine back to the day where somebody from the corporate office told them all they had to get a Twitter account and Barry's like, all right, well, whatever. Yeah. That's what I have to do. That's what I have to do. And so, yeah, I do think that there is, I think the fundamental question that I keep coming back to on the Pac-12 is that if you do something for now, that's fine, but how many people of those 10 schools are looking ahead going, 5 years from now, I don't know if this is sustainable, and we might as well just go now?
That's been the biggest question to me the entire time.
Yeah. So
it is. It's like did the ACC today kick the can down the road? They solved it.
Well, they know where the road ends.
The road is like
way.
never ending. It's like trying to take off for El Paso from here in Waco or anywhere. But at least they solved
by foot.
They solved something. They solved an issue. It didn't take long. It didn't get into. We don't know what was said behind the meeting, but obviously Phillips calmed everybody down or told everyone to shut up and let's get some work done, and they did a week after their meeting. But I don't know what you guys said. Why not fix the problem now and not? But will it ever end?
Well, it's a different problem than what the ACC was facing by a pretty wide margin. The ACC already had security. It's just they didn't like that security as much as they liked other security. But they're in no danger of like a dissolution or anything like that, unless there would have been this band of rogue schools who had all gathered together. Like I saw something like, did y'all happen to see there? I don't know where it came from, but like just a day or two ago, there was thoughts that somebody else in the ACC had jumped on board and joined the fray, and now they had 8, and then today, we've solved our problem. So I don't know what that was about, but I saw that creep up there for like a second this week, and obviously that's not quite the full case. But yeah, I mean, they're in a much I hate it for Pac fans because here you were, and over the last week, you kind of just enjoyed a little bit of quiet compared to what it has been like with these discussions pop up. It's like, all right, ACC's got the main stage now. Problem was they only danced for like 2 songs, and then they were off, and they were signing a new agreeing to whatever, and all happy again. So spotlight shifts back to where it was before. And that's the question that's, if I'm a Pac fan, that's the thing that I'm wondering about. If I do want this thing to be as close to what it is now for as long as possible, is, okay, if we solve this upcoming problem, which is the main thing on your plate right now, that does beg the question of the grant of rights and the length of that, and are we doing this all over again in 5 years? And if so, what does that look like? And I think that's your big question about the future more so. And if y'all really listen to Mac Rhodes here over the last couple times, I feel like he's been screaming that nothing's like happening imminently, and more so really shouting about down the line. The way he set up, the way he said things.
That tone changed a little bit more.
Very much so.
Without it being there. Yeah, I thought the last time he mentioned that too.
I feel like he's mentioned that now a couple times where it's like, yeah, not right now, we're not really so sure, but down the line, you never know. And I don't know if that's because maybe they're interest right now is not quite what it was or quite as hot and heavy as it was. And so the better chances down the line, or maybe that's just because he knows that no matter what happens right now, the better chances down the line 5 years again. And so you're already positioning yourself for that. But yeah, it sucks for the Pac fans that this is still ongoing and you don't know when it's going to end. And even when it does, you're still going to be questioning, okay, but then how long is it? And then what happens and all that.
I want to say something about realignment. I heard this, and I appreciate Katie Rader sharing with this. This makes so much sense. If the NFL was college football, which conference, which division would be the SEC or Big Ten?
Well, it's always in flux.
No.
NFC East.
No, it would be the NFC East.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
Cowboys, Giants, Philadelphia.
For sure. Absolutely.
And why do they succeed, and why does the NFC East not have a Big Ten or SEC type contract compared to, let's say, the AFC North? Because there's a centralized body that controls the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's
there's a great analogy because he's right about that.
That would look, breaking college football off from everything else and treating it like the different animal that it is probably the smartest thing to do. That doesn't mean that the revenue from college football that's going to go to these schools isn't going to help everything else, but they need to govern it differently for sure because it's completely different. I do think this, and the other thing on back to the Pac-12 and what they have to assess. Now, the Big 12 will probably have to assess this a little bit as well, but I think to a much lesser degree. There are not – like in the Big Ten, when their TV contract's up, they're not going to have to worry about breaking up. But when the Pac-12's contract's up again in 5 years, they're going to have to worry about it again.
If it's 5 years.
Yeah, if it's 5 years. So, say they do. Say, look, we're better together right now. We'll stick together for 5 years. But 5 years from now, are they ready to do this all over again? And that's where I think that you might have some schools that are like, I don't want to do this again.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I think that's more than fair. That's not like sitting there trying to create. That's legitimately a question. Is like, okay, we've seen how much of a struggle this has been. If you sit there and you go, all right, 5 more years. I mean, that's going to fly by in a second. And then you're like, yeah, what are we doing then at that point? Is it stronger and more stable? Because man, it sure seems like everything else is far less stable and far less strong than it probably is right now or will be in the future. And it's very interesting to see how that spotlight has shifted back.
I want to clarify what I meant by the NFC East, not with who's good. Not that. The value. The value of those 4 franchises is over. No matter how bad Washington has been, ownership change or not, the value of those 4 in the cities and markets they're in is just incredible.
They're the closest to having Alabama, Georgia, Florida, LSU in
yep.
one division, yeah.
And then last year, all of them were above 500. But even if they were to, like, 3 of them were 6-11. So a couple other notes. Kevin McCullough